Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make an eggless buttermilk fruitcake, and this is what it looks like. This is a wonderfully moist and tender cake. It's full of ground spices and dried and candied fruit. So the first thing you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a loaf pan, and we are going to butter and flour our pan. So I've just melted a little bit of butter, and then I'm using a pastry brush to brush the inside. Now, if you don't want to do this, you could buy one of those vegetable sprays that also have the flour right in it. So that's another option, but adds a little butter. So I like to use this. So then, once you butter it, then just put a little bit of flour in there. Now, I normally do this over the sink. I just put a piece of paper towel and just go move the flour around the inside of your pan, like I've done, and then just, it's going to be noisy. And there you have your pan. So now, this is a really easy fruit cake. We don't need our mixer. It's a quick bread. Wet ingredients, dry ingredients, mix them together, and we're done. Perfect. So for the dry ingredients, in a large bowl, you will need 1.5 cups, which is about 200 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And to that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of salt. I like to use a kosher salt, prefer that, but you could just use table salt. And then this has got some spices, so I'm adding 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of grated nutmeg, and then 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger and 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. Of course, you could vary that. If you say some people don't like cloves, the ground cloves, you could just leave that out. So I'm just going to whisk that, make sure everything's mixed together. And then we're going to add in here our dried and candied fruit. Now, you can really vary this according to your personal preference. Like I said, I like a mixture of both the dried and I like the candied, like mixed peel and the candied cherries. If you don't like that, you could just leave that out. So I'm using a mixture of raisins. I'm using the dark raisins. You could use the golden raisins. I have here some dried cranberries. Dried cherries would be good. I'm using some figs. I've cut them up, dried figs. I've cut them up into small pieces. You could use like dates or prunes. You could use some dried apricots. I mean, really kind of whatever you like. And then I also have a mixture of candied lemon and orange peel. And then my personal favorite, I like the candied cherries, red. There's also candied green cherries. So you need 2 cups total, which is about 300 grams. So just mix it up as whatever you like. Sometimes I just do raisins, depends what you have, the time of year. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to put my hands right in here. You want to coat all the fruit with the flour. That way you can, some of the fruits kind of stick together like the raisins. And I know some people are going to ask, can I macerate the fruit before I make the cake in alcohol? You sure can. You could do it up to a day or 2 ahead of time. I'm not going to today because I'm doing like a fast and easy fruit cake. So for our wet ingredients, in a separate bowl, I have 3/4 cup, which is 150 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar. And I typically like to just put my fingers through that because sometimes you can get some lumps in your brown sugar. Just make sure. And then you will need 1/2 cup, 113 grams of butter. And you want to melt your butter and then let it cool down to room temperature. And I'm just going to add that. whisk that. And then for flavoring, half a teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. If you want to leave that out, by all means you could. And then, as it's a buttermilk fruitcake, we're going to add 1 cup, 240 milliliters, 240 grams of buttermilk. Now you can buy your buttermilk. You can also buy buttermilk powder, or you can make your own, like a really good substitute. Take 1 cup, 240 milliliters of milk, and stir in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or vinegar. Just let it stand at room temperature for 10 minutes, and you have your own, buttermilk, sour milk. So just whisk, or you could just stir it all together. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to make a well in the center of my dry ingredients and just pour wet right in there and stir it together, and we are done. You can see this. You want a fruit cake, you know, really any time of the year, but especially Christmas. This is one that you can make, and you can serve it the same day. So it's not like the ones where the fruit cake where you, you know, brush it with alcohol over several weeks. Although I do have a recipe for that type of fruit cake. You can just go to the joybaking.com website for that recipe. But this is for, you know, the last minute cook, which aren't we all sometimes? So just stir it together and we're done. So let's pour it in. Then smooth the top. So now to bake this, everyone's oven is a little different. I find between, say, 50 and 60 minutes. So it will rise, it will turn a beautiful golden brown, and a toothpick inserted into the center will come out clean, and you will start to see the cake just start to shrink from the sides of the pan. So somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes. Okay, so our buttermilk fruitcake is done. As you can see, beautiful golden brown color. It's starting to pull away from the sides of the pan, and a toothpick inserted into the center came out clean. So just put your pan on a wire rack. We're going to let it cool about 10 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll take it out of the pan. So now to take your cake out of the pan, get a flat edge, like a spatula or a knife, and then just run it around the inside, just to make sure it's not sticking. Okay, and then take your wire rack, flip it, and hopefully it'll come out, and there we have it. Okay, so now I'm going to it's still quite warm, so I'm going to let that cool down, and when we come back, we will try a slice. Okay, so now, cut. So there, oh, doesn't that look gorgeous? All the fruits. Let's take it. Still a little warm. You can serve this warm, room temperature, cold, and it is very good with butter. I normally put a nice layer, slathering of butter on there. Oh. It is a very flavorful bread. It's very moist and tender from that using buttermilk. And I like using a variety of dried fruits and candied fruits. I think it gives it a lot of flavor. And then of course, the spices. A really great quick bread when you want a fruit cake and you don't want to do a lot of work. this is the one for you. So try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.